I'm good. I'm not panicked yet. No. So should we go ahead and start and give everybody a couple more minutes? See, look, my slides are advancing too fast. Yeah, 2 minutes in. We'll go ahead and start. Kellyn might have stuff to do. All right, so this is the Data Platform Women in Technology Virtual Group. Welcome to our first meeting as we kicking things back up since the new leadership has taken over. Just a couple of slides before Kellyn starts. One is how to connect with us. We have our website. Of course, most of you already went through Meetup, otherwise you couldn't have gotten here. Then we have Twitter to keep up with us. I was going to add our LinkedIn page and a few other things, but I ran out of time, so we'll get to those later. Just a few quick links to keep up with us. I was going to advertise our upcoming sessions. We need people for November and December 16th, but we do have a session scheduled for December 10th with Aaron Dibster for automating deployments with GitHub. So that should be an interesting session. We'll be doing a technical session on that day. That's all I got on that one. And then today's session, see, I did really short slides. We've got the power of words, how misguided descriptions undermine women in tech by Kellyn Gorman. And that's all I was going to say because Kellyn can talk about herself, I'm sure. And then I might duplicate content and all that good stuff. So that's all I came up with. So now I'll let Kellyn do all the fun stuff.
It's time for me to share, huh? Sharing is not turned on. Do you need to just turn me into a presenter? I know it's Zoom.
That would be helpful, wouldn't it?
Microsoft Teams has spoiled me. I'm just used to all of its bugs instead of Zoom's bugs.
That's okay. I just didn't hit the button.
Can do
that was
it
my
now.
fault. I have hit the magic button now.
I think, yeah, that's 2. Share. Give it a second here, and then slideshow from beginning. Oh, that should look much better. Let me know if you can see that all right.
Yes.
Awesome. I can no longer see the Zoom screen. Let's see if I can fix this so I can get mine. No. Nope, it's not going to let me. Show taskbar. That's what I want. I want my taskbar back so I can get the Zoom back up. Yay. Now I can see all your beautiful faces as I go forward. Hello, everyone. My name is Kellyn Gorman. I am going to bring this, I'll bring this back down. Apologies. I'm trying to get there. Now we got both of the beautiful screens. I love that split view that they've got now. Can you go to my next slide? Maybe I can go that way. That'll work. That'll work. I'm happy with this. I'm happy with this. I'm gonna move this out of the way. I've got my screens all messed up right now, people. Sorry. There we go. Why isn't it moving forward? Apologies, folks. There. I want split view with this. Can I get this with split view? You're still not doing what I want. 1 second, folks. Oh, that's even better. Okay. We are cooking with gas. Yes. My name is Kellyn Gorman. I am a database and an accidental AI specialist. Somehow I ended up on a number of AI projects, which I'm enjoying. Is a bit of a surprise because I am a deep relational system specialist. I have 25 years experience in relational systems. Started out getting my certification in Oracle databases. And as we like to joke about, I went into my first DBA job and they handed me promptly a 7 terabyte SQL Server 7 database, active cluster on NT40. That was my introduction to SQL Server, which was so much fun. I used to call it Microsoft. And they're like, we cannot help you. You're going to have to figure this out on your own. But worked on Oracle, Sybase, DB2 Ingress, which is a predecessor to Postgres before I started working on Postgres. MySQL, you name it, it's been thrown at me. My most recent position that I was at, I was the director of data and AI. At Silk, I was the only data person, so I ended up on a number of AI projects. I was able to contract outside of that. So got to contract on AI projects with Google. My favorite one right now is the one that I did with the Zoological Society of London, where we are tracking 600 lions in Nepal with really the best thing to say is like facial recognition software so that they don't have to tag the lions and track them and have physical interaction with them, which really puts many of those, I guess they're not really park rangers, but you get it, the people that are dealing with these lions and having to take care of them. So it makes them vulnerable and that poachers aren't able to track them as well. And there's a lot of security protocols on the data that's going into the Postgres database. And it's just a really cool project. I've enjoyed that one. I've authored a number of books. You will find books, depending on if you're looking at my maiden name, my married name, or a combination of both on SQL Server, on Oracle, on DEI, and women in tech. I'm found online under my handle, DBA Kevlar. I am known and have received awards both at Microsoft and Oracle under security and optimization. I am known for what's called the AWR Warehouse, which is the database repository for the performance data for Oracle. And I have a long history of mentoring and an advocate for the tech industry, especially most of the women in tech on the Oracle side. And I love to be involved with the Microsoft community because that's like my favorite community. I fell in love. I'm the weird Oracle girl that the Microsoft community adopted, and I love it over here. So, and I should say, I'm a week and a half in at Redgate as their new advocate. So I joined Steve Jones and Grant Fritchie and Ryan Booz. I am their fourth multi-platform database advocate. I will be at Past Summit a lot coming this next month. So let's talk about words. And, words are power. I was taught as a child that you think with your head, you feel with your heart, and you say what you mean. And so I've never really had an issue with my own vocabulary, and I've used it for a lot of situations. I'm brought in a lot to kind of navigate difficult situations. That I'm very good at negotiation and strategic discussions, but I found out that a lot of folks did have a problem with it. And we think about words. Words are weapons. Words are power. They can bring us together. They can bring us together in a community. They can connect us to people, but they can also divide us. They can cause miscommunication. They can cause us to exclude different people. And as we see in this, especially this season in the United States, it is, of course, a lot of politics going on right now that can be very polarizing. These are terms that all of us kind of recognize. We've all heard these: man up, gentleman's agreement. They had a gentleman's agreement to go forward with this deal. Old boys network, I used to hear that all the time. It was an old boys network. This is why you were excluded, Kellyn. And I myself have been referred to as somebody's right-hand man. I've also been called by the next one as a big compliment. Kellyn is very ballsy. I'm the poster girl for ADHD, but we usually hear the term poster boy. And we talk about, having the manpower to accomplish something, being somebody's wingman. I use this term. This is one of my terms that bothers me, that I refer to groups of people as guys. I refer to everyone as dude. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. You recognize that these are masculine terms that we use every day. And anyone who goes to any event, people are manning the booth. I heard this all the time. Are you manning the booth today, Kellyn? Feminine words at the same time can be viewed in a very negative light. We've heard, certain folks say to guys, you're acting kind of girly, do you have your panties in a bunch? I've never heard so much that somebody's acting like a grandpa, but I've heard them say, you're kind of being a grandma about this, and there's even, I don't know if anybody's seen like the Snickers commercials where you've got somebody acting like Betty White, and they're like going, just have a Snickers bar, be more like yourself. It's kind of going into that term. And guys can refer to and saying you're being a sissy. You got wind up your skirt. Are you being a drama queen? We know that guys may get into a physical fight, but women get into cat fights. She's a diva. And another one of my favorites from events is she a booth babe? I remember walking into Oracle events way back when and walking into North Moscone Center in San Francisco, and there were women walking around with QR codes on the butts of their dresses, and me looking and going, I'm in a black dress too. I'm out of here. You know, terrified that somebody was looking for a QR code on me. These are very common situations where I was the deep technical expert for my team, but I was the only woman, and people coming into a booth and immediately assuming I was the booth babe and I was not the technical expert. It is a term that brings me to cringing many times. So this gender exclusive terminology in a professional setting is really concerning. We can be referred to as Miss, Mrs., girl, lady, sweetheart, honey, babe, all different kind of things. It really diminishes our professional identity. When we're at an event, and I felt this very much so when I was at older technology events, when we start talking about DB2 and Oracle and DevOps events, I'd walk in, and for some of these events, I remember being there and there were 5 women out of 300 participants at the event. I was the keynote speaker, and yet that's all the women that were there. And I was coming in, and it was so important to be taken as a professional, as an equal, to be received that way by the other men that were there, and walk in, and there were women walking around in high heels, see-through skirts to deliver drinks to them, and feeling very self-conscious, feeling that it was more difficult for them to see me as an equal when there was other representation there that said not to. Studies have already shown that this language, this terminology is inbred into us. It is built in from the earliest times of our culture, and that this impacts us in the professional setting. There's a 2017 study that already says that it's 43% more often that we dismiss it, that we don't even notice that it occurs, and that there are times that we need to start changing this. And even though I see it's getting better every day, a lot of that comes about by having the conversations like we're having right now. It's everywhere. It starts even before we realize it, as soon as we're born. There's a 2009 study by Dr. Elliott that they took infants before they were really showing male versus female. They dressed them in the opposite gender. They referred to them by the opposite gender. They brought in over 100 adults to interact with these children. They did not let the adults know what gender the babies were. And they found that they very clearly, every single adult interacted with them in a very gender specific way. If a little baby boy, a toddler boy, fell, what they thought was a boy, they would say, get up, wipe off your knees. Come on, you've got it. Be a big boy. Come on, you got this. You're tough. Where a little girl, if she would fall, they would coddle her. They would take care of her. You recognize that they were dismissing the boy's emotions and feelings of pain, where the girls, they would actually be sensitive to it. They would bring the girls girl toys. Take at times boy toys away, they'd hand them baby dolls. For the boys, they would give them trucks and work with them and play with them in a more assertive, even sometimes aggressive play style versus the girls. This starts out very early, making us realize that much of this gender play, gender communication starts out before children are even aware of it, and can be demonstrated even in these kind of scientific studies. It's shaped by our families, our friends. I remember even being a young child, about 5, 6 years old, and not understanding why I couldn't do what my male cousins were allowed to do, why I wasn't allowed to go where they were going. And there were times where, because I was very mouthy and asking a lot of questions, an adult would become frustrated and just answer me with, Kellyn, you're a little girl. And so this stuck with me. I was very aware of this. So this happens very young, and I hear these same kind of stories from other women. Personal and professional interactions towards women are often very blurred, where we have interactions with individuals, and it doesn't matter if it's men or women, because gender communication can happen from both genders. We can see this with women as they're communicating, that we will be told, I'm not real comfortable with a female boss. I'm not really thinking about her in this promotion position. It happens. It impacts both of us negatively as well. I have been in work environments where I have seen more what we would consider more toxic masculinity take over in a workplace and see the productivity, the actual interaction and collaboration become less common because of that change in the communication style. It also affects HR, DEI policies, as well as the work environment itself. So, how do we view men and women in the majority of these interactions? One of the things that we notice is that there's a common historical view for men that we take them at their word. And this goes back to very early times. We can talk about 17 and 1800s, where you needed to take a man at his word. He was the head of the household. He needed to be, we needed to trust him. We needed to feel that if he said something, it was the truth. It must be taken at its face value. We didn't have that background for women, so we may not assess as much value on what a woman says. There's challenges that women have, and a lot of studies that are starting to come out that we don't hear women as much when they say, that we may second guess and double talk women. So women come in and say, I feel this way, I think this way, this happened to me. And people may come back and say, are you sure that's what happened? Do you think you may have, just you may have misunderstood them. You may not have heard what they really meant by that. Could you go back and confirm that? And this can make women feel less comfortable with their assessments. They may not feel as comfortable with what they're saying, or that they're taken at face value when they really are saying exactly what they mean. This has a tendency to affect us in both personal as well as professional lives, where women may only be assessed in their personal situation with relationships. I found that I was able to get a lot more credibility when I was recognized married to my husband, who was well known in the industry. This was a challenge for me that when we took out my standing as a single woman in the technical scenario, in these older tech communities, and suddenly I was seen as married, that was removed from the table, and men had to take me just as a technical professional. It was a very big change in how I was respected, how I was viewed, and how people interacted with me. This can be viewed very much in public spaces. The video I'm about to show you is pretty well known. You may have seen it before, but it's a good example of how people may not be able to see titles with women and may only refer to them as Miss, Mrs., Miss, wifey, mother. Male counterparts may use this to take respect away from women in the technical arena, in professional arenas. And I'd like you just to watch it because I think it's a very good example of this. So I'm going to play this real quick. And I ask you just to watch it and definitely watch the interaction between these two. And I'm going to skip the ad, which goes every single time.
We can't hear it.
Yeah, we're getting no sound on the video, Kellyn, unfortunately.
When you share in Zoom, you have to click the share audio separately.
Hey, Kellyn, did you hear us? We couldn't hear the video.
You can't hear it?
Yeah, Cindy says you have to, when you do that, you have to tell it to share the audio separately in Zoom.
Great. Where is that share? Advanced sharing ultimate.
It's in the advanced options.
That's where I'm at.
It's a little checkbox, I think, at the bottom. It's been a while since I've done it.
I'm looking. Audio settings.
Like when you're actually doing the sharing and you choose which screen to share, it's in there somewhere.
Is it? Thank you.
Do you have to stop sharing and reshare to get it to work?
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay.
you probably have to stop sharing in order to be able to see it, Kellyn.
Let me try this again.
I know how computers work. They hide all the options from you.
They do. Share sound. I think I've got it. I'm going to try it again here. Let me know if you can hear it now.
The officials.
If Mrs.
Yes.
Rosario has something about one of those
It's Dr.
standards,
Rosario. Thank you,
if
sir.
Mrs. Rosario has something about one
Dr.
of-
Rosario.
It's
Well,
a public meeting
I'm
where a
sorry.
city
Your
official
name says on here
refuses to
Carrie
address this
Rosario.
woman by her title, doctor.
Well, I'm sorry. Your name says
okay.
on here Carrie Rosario. Hey, Carrie. Um,
It's
if
Dr.
you got-
Rosario.
Dr. Carrie Rosario has a doctorate in health education and is an associate professor at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. But zoning commissioner
Your
Tony
name says on here
Collins
Carrie
apparently
Rosario.
can't
Hey,
be
Carrie.
bothered.
So please, sir, call me as I would like to be called. That's how I'm
It
identifying.
doesn't really matter. We're here to
It
talk
matters
about
to
this
me.
voting.
It matters to me.
I-
And
I'm-
out of
I'm
respect,
sorry.
I would like you to call me by the name that I'm asking you to call me by.
I spoke with Dr. Rosario about the heated exchange.
I was very frustrated by the disregard for such a simple request.
Ms. Rosario,
Earlier,
situation
another
is
commissioner
you've
made a
got
similar error,
resolution
but
from
immediately
2005.
apologized.
It's Dr. Rosario, by the way.
My apologies. I really don't want to offend you in that regard. So Dr. Rosario, I do apologize for that.
No problem.
Dr.
Mrs.
Rosario says
Rosario
she
has
believes
something
Commissioner
about one of
Collins
those
was
Dr.
being
Rosario,
intentionally
thank you.
Mrs.
disrespectful.
Rosario has-
It's been my experience as a young Black woman with a doctoral degree that I've often been dismissed. It felt like maybe he didn't want to show me that respect.
It's reminding people of the controversy with First Lady Jill Biden when a column in the Wall Street Journal questioned whether she should be addressed as doctor. Dr. Rosario says she can relate.
Do you perceive this as racism, as sexism, or perhaps both?
I did see that this is at the intersection of both racism and sexism, even if it's not something that was intent in Mr. Collins's heart.
She says Collins did leave her a voicemail apologizing.
Do you accept his apology?
I accept the apology. I have no ill will towards Mr. Collins.
Collins did not respond to our request for comment. The Greensboro City Council.
So there was a review of him, and he was put on leave for a little bit from this position. And you start to realize that there's accountability that people are starting to be held to when these situations. But I think this is a good example of what you're seeing when these challenges happen. I've sat in meetings when this has happened. It's not a lot of fun to watch.
Council voted to remove him from the city's zoning commission.
If I can get it to move forward here. So apologies. So where do we see some of this? We definitely see it online. I think with remote work and the way that we work now, just online, as we're seeing, we've got Zoom meetings, we've got Teams, we've got, Google Meet, all of these other ones. We're online more, email interactions, Slack, all of these communication wise that we're more often maybe not in front, face front with other people. It also documents the evidence of it. So I think we're seeing it more often because it is documented. These online forums, especially when we start talking about gaming and, not just gaming, but we start looking at sales and legal and maybe areas where there's not as many women or women are starting to come in more to those technical areas. It's challenging. It's frustrating for some people. And also we had a pandemic, so people are a little more stressed. There's a little more frustration as things change. And, We've got economic challenges and all of it that's going on. Gendered slurs and terms that emphasize, women's gender identity versus her roles. This is starting to be pushed more with DEI initiatives, and they're starting to, talk about it. And where it's getting better, code of conducts may not have existed for a long time. So some people may not be aware that it may just culturally have been built into their communication style. And so they use it without thinking. As I was kind of saying, a lot of it is subconscious too. I've had a lot of folks, I know I myself have terms that I'm working on. I think all of us are, even as I was raised to be very aware of my language, I have those terms that I want to work on. We are, being referred to 1,000 times a day, with certain times in communications that you may not realize, and somebody may get upset and you go, why did they get so upset that I use this term with them? I'm going to talk a little bit about being told that I am assertive, that I'm intimidating. I heard intimidating one time 7 times in 4 days, and it was used as kind of an apology, an excuse. But to hear that many times, you start to get frustrated with it. You get tired of it because it's not holding people accountable. It's not fixing the problem. You're just hearing it as an excuse. Can we dismiss it? And that doesn't work very well. There's no daily counts of this. No one really knows how often it's happening, but we're very aware that for some folks, especially if you've got those that are more what we call the term tall poppies, or people that are standing out a little bit more from the crowd, that they're moving up, they're moving fast, they're in outside of the norms, more askew from the standard behaviors that we expect from women in the community, that they may experience this more often. So we're going to start talking about a few words here and what words we could use different. Now, this is a word that I myself felt was a compliment when I was younger. Feisty. I liked being told I was feisty. Thing is that in the business world, this can be seen as argumentative or challenging. Do we really want somebody, an employee, that is feisty? Sounds like she may be difficult. So different words that you could use instead of this is like energetic, passionate, vibrant, dynamic. And determined is one that you could use instead, but be aware that determined, when combined with a woman, might also be viewed in a negative manner. So always think about your words, the words that you're using, and what your goal is with your communication. If you're looking for a positive communication, always think about the terms that you're using, those adjectives that are connected to those around you. One that I heard a lot as a child, and I always wonder if this is the reason that I avoid leadership positions, is bossy. I was one of those that I saw my male cousins that were the same age as older than me. They would be bossing around all of us. And then when I did, I was very quickly told to stop being bossy constantly, no matter if I was older than the kids around me or if I was younger, I needed to stop being bossy. And people don't like bossy women. And not that she should be the boss. They see us in a leadership position, and it may be an uncomfortable kind of view of us. Words you can use instead are confident. I am a natural born leader. Just plain and simple. People gravitate towards me and follow me. Is it something people are comfortable with? But it is a description that should be used. Decisive, influential, guiding. These are all very positive words that can be used with women when you're giving descriptions, when you're in communication with others, when there are decisions being made in the room, specifically when women are not there, that you may hear something, oh, well, I see her as kind of being bossy. No, she's really quite influential. She's a natural born leader. She is confident. She is guiding. Abrasive. How often have we heard this with women, especially those in like political circles, leadership circles? This is something that you want to avoid. Consider the source of it. You're going to hear that with a couple of the words that are coming up in these next slides. That always think about the reason people are using the term that they're using. If it is kind of voiced in a way that may be taking away from the power of that woman, that trying to put her in a less positive light. So use words that are more like direct. She's unfiltered. She's honest, she's bold, she's open. Rarely are we going to see or view a man who is bold as negative, but sometimes people can view bold women as negative. Or there's bumper stickers that are out there that say, rarely, what is that? Rarely women, what is it that make history? And I'm trying to remember it. And I know Cindy's sitting on this call and she knows that term when they say that rarely do, what is it? Boring women make history. I can't think of the word for it, but it goes right in this. You know, it does. It takes a bold woman. It takes a mouthy woman. It takes somebody who's going to stand up and say something, do something, be something that maybe is not inside the cards for those that are more in that comfort zone that want you to fit inside a box. And if there was ever a word that is only used to describe women, it is shrill. I don't know how often I have heard this describing women that were presenting. I started looking at these patterns that were developing as I was reviewing women's speaking sessions. And something that I only heard with women was she was shrill. She spoke too fast and she spoke too high. Her voice was too high and she was shrill. This is a term that needs to be completely removed. She's unpleasant. She's painful. Instead, see, she's vibrant. She's expressive. She may be intense. She's energetic. She's vocal. And intense is another word that people may see in a negative light. So again, consider the full grasp of all the words you're going to put in that sentence, seeing how that you can make sure that she is being, you know, seen in the best light possible when you're trying to use certain words and certain descriptions. Another one that is often seen with just women, because as we like to say, you know, when a guy punches a hole in a wall, he's not seen as being over emotional. Yeah, the truth is that we all have our emotions. We all feel things. And I know I myself, somebody came to me one time and they were like, I just don't think this is you. They said you were in hysterics, Kellyn, and I've never seen you hysterical. And I had to laugh at it because it was absolutely true. Women that show they can automatically be demonstrated as saying they are over emotional, even when we're just aware of other people's emotions. You should automatically look and see if it's a way to dismiss them. Look if it's a way to dispute their claims, remove credit from them, find a way to remove them from a situation, a team, all of that. I see that happen very often. Words that you can use instead is say emotionally aware. She is aware of, you know, the mood in the room. She can read people. This is awesome. Saying over emotional, that doesn't describe her skills. That's a positive skill of being described in a negative way. She's empathetic. She can read that room. She's very aware of people. It's a very powerful skill that many times people dismiss. You know, we talk about women when we talk about that her ability to read people may be done in a way that makes it sound like it's magical and it's made up. She has an intuition. You know, we're men, it's their gut instinct. Make sure that we're seeing this in an equal manner when we talk about gender specific discussions. She can be passionate. There's nothing wrong with being passionate. When men are passionate, it makes them CEOs. When women are passionate, it makes them problems. One of my favorite, and I will tell you, I remember this back from 2009. Somebody described me as aggressive, and the woman from HR stopped the person in their tracks and said, Kellyn is not aggressive, she is assertive. And I will remember this woman, Heidi, for as long as I live as being my hero because I loved her for it. Women are often identified as being aggressive for being ambitious, for being assertive, for being themselves and being equal to the guys around them, their peers. And this is really important to identify. Are we using this term to dismiss them? Are we using this term to color them in a negative light? Use words that are more active and accurate descriptions, such as assertive and driven, proactive, decisive, being bold. These are things that women should be, just as men around them are. And my other favorite is intimidating. As I stated, I was dealing with challenges of being collaborative with teams. I wasn't being included. I was being excluded. And I wanted to understand why. And in 4 days, I was described as intimidating. And it wasn't in a negative light. It was actually being used as an excuse. Kellyn, you were so incredibly capable. You are so competent. You're so intelligent. It can be intimidating for people. After I had heard this, as I said, in 7 times in 4 days, it was no longer a compliment. It was no longer an excuse. It was no longer a validation for what was going on. It was frustrating, and it didn't fix the problem at hand. This is really important to kind of move back from this excuse, this way of stating this challenge that women go through when they are not included in projects, interactions with coworkers, collaboration within teams, being considered for a promotion. This is one of the things that I thought about when I was trying to work my way through the frustration that I felt about this term intimidating, was that if you had Joe and Joe came in and, God, Joe, he's so intelligent and he's capable and he's competent. That's why I didn't consider him for a promotion. It just doesn't happen. So why is it happening for women? So definitely think about this term. Intimidating needs to be stepped back for women and start thinking of words such as commanding, impressive, she's powerful, she's respected. These are the ways that we need to start thinking about women in the tech industry, as we need to think about them in all industries. So this is time for you to start to interact with this session. There are a lot of words that I may not have thought about, that I may not have run into in my career. Are there terms that you think were missed in this session that we should go through, or that we should talk about, that are that there's better words that we can use than the ones that you've run into? Put them in the chat. And as I continue going into this session, we're going to return to those words in the chat and talk about them and how can we use better ones. And I don't want this just for women too. I know we've got some guys here in the session. If there are male terms too, because I am bothered by male terms too. Most people in this room know that my favorite coworker is my husband, and we have exchanged email addresses. We've written emails for each other. I have seen some of the challenges he's gone through working in very strong DEI environments where I felt he got the short end of the stick instead of me getting the short end of the stick. And I like to discuss those as well, because he ended up going through some of these where there were times where I was given allies and sponsors that there was no way for him to have access to, and the benefits that it was given me. So think about those words. If there are terms that you go, I don't know what other word I could have used or what other word somebody else should have used, put those in the chat and we will talk about those as we continue down into these slides. So the next thing we're going to talk about is dismissing these conversations as they happen. I don't know how often when I would say, I didn't like how you referred to this individual. And the recent one was actually a gentleman that was being bullied by a coworker, that where I had more power. One, I was a director at the company. Two, as a female, I could complain and I wasn't seen. He was actually referred to as a sissy. That's what he was told when he complained about it. And I'm the one who stood up and said, I don't know how he's dealt with this for the last 2 years. I couldn't handle it for 2 days. Why has this been allowed to go on for 2 years? So be aware that it was told to me when I called out the bully for what he said. I do not like how you spoke to him just now. It was, slanderous. I don't like it. It will not continue to happen. The response from the bully was, this is how we joke, Kellyn. We're just joking. And this is a common way to excuse terminology that is unfair, no matter if it's gender specific, if it's work on any of these. It was a stereotype. He worked in a environment and came from a culture where men were expected to be very, very masculine. And that's one of the problems of this. It really does, when something is dismissed, as a joke, it is saying that, we're going to just forget that it caused harm. It's not important. It doesn't matter if it's important to you. I don't think it's important to us. We're not going to make a deal of it. We're just going to dismiss it. It does perpetuate toxic environments. And like I said, for this person here, he had been dealing with this toxic environment for 2 years at that point. It reinforced this stereotype. Again, this was a gentleman who was dealing with this, but as a woman, I was asked to deal with no, I will not be treated this way. It erodes trust, inclusivity. I didn't want to work with this individual. By the end of this business trip, I would not go and eat with this individual. I would not interact with them outside of the business meetings. I mean, I completely isolated. And you think about that, you're not collaborating at that point. You're not producing, you're not doing anything with this individual. I didn't trust him. I didn't want to be in the same vehicle with him. I didn't want to be on the same plane with him. You start thinking about how much trust is lost at that point when you see somebody that is acting in a way that is not inclusive, that is not, trustworthy, plain and simple. It discourages accountability. When you start to feel that way, I know I could see the target, what he had been going through for 2 years. And it just hurt me to my soul to see that for somebody. And it's also legal and ethical risks. That was what I leaned on when I came back from this trip, that this was expensive for the company. It wasn't good to have that in front of a customer, all of this stuff. I was leaning on that to make sure that it was being addressed. And I knew that that's where the power lied. That's where it was, strategically the right thing to do to address that problem and get it, fixed. We also have another common thing when it comes for women that has gone on for years, and I saw this very much in the older tech. You'd get comments like, "You're pretty good at this for a girl." This next two, I got a lot. You're not like other girls. And I did grow up. I was, very much ADHD. I didn't like, pastel colors and Barbies and all the things that everybody said made me a girl. So for when I got into tech and guys were telling me, "Well, you're not like other girls." Well, yeah, I knew I wasn't like other girls. But to have somebody recognize that and tell me that was good instead of being told, like when I was, a young girl trying to make friends, that I wasn't like a girl and it wasn't a bad thing, that was really validating. That made me feel better. And all of a sudden I was like, well, I found my people. This is awesome. And it's a term that they like to call the cool girl rhetoric. It's not a good thing, though, for women overall. And the reason that it is not a good thing is that, when we start talking about it, it refers to a woman who fits into a male-dominated environment by aligning with stereotypical masculine behavior. And I am one of those girls that, I don't like what they consider girl colors. Never have. But if somebody goes in, and I don't know if anybody's ever had their colors done, I'm what's called a true winter. I look good in very dark colors. I don't look good in pastels. I don't look good in fluorescent colors or anything like that. So I'm going to gravitate to those colors. My favorite color is green. Girl stuff often comes in dark greens. It doesn't. So I always felt like I was excluded outside of what was considered more feminine. I didn't like girl things. I liked science projects and Legos and all these other things that might be dismissed. At the same time, there were some girl things that I liked. And people go, "Well, that's not cool." And I was like, that's excluding other people. Why can't people just like what they like? Why can't they just do what they want to do? And why can't we be happy for them? So it's really important that you recognize that what people like for themselves doesn't matter if they're male or female or somewhere in between. They should absolutely be able to like what they like and be considered cool, and it's good for them. And it's not just if it's isolated and narrow-minded. So what we want to do is get rid of that whole cool girl scenario, because it does undermine efforts for gender equality. It does. All of a sudden, women are not feeling, cool when they want to do their kind of things at a technical event. What is considered more feminine, it's not included. It perpetuates stereotypes. It does. If you look up geek girl or tech girl online, you'll see a pattern. You'll definitely see a pattern. It's going to be a girl, usually with dark hair, maybe braids. She's got the same, I swear they have the same glasses frames, every single one of them. And they're probably going to be dressed in a plaid skirt with a white shirt and a tie. It is insane how much they look alike. It limits the authentic representation. The more varied individuals that we have within the community, the more varied products that we produce, it limits our ability to produce technology that looks like the world around us. And it is a pressure to conform. You feel that. I remember when I started calling out a lot of the things that were keeping women from wanting to be more included in tech. And people said, that's not cool girl, Kellyn. You're not being a cool girl. I didn't care. That wasn't my goal. My goal was to make everybody feel included. So how can we fix this? One of them, naming products. And I put some of the things on here that we don't even think about. You know, when we talk about, you know, our cables. I mean, some of these cables, when we start talking about the masculine versus feminine on our cable ends, you know, penetration testing. I keep thinking about what it's like for a little kid of color to say, I want to be a hacker, and somebody coming up and going, are you going to be a black or a white hacker? What do you respond to that? How do you feel about that? There are a lot of terms that have gender as well as race components that people don't even think about. And these are kind of the things that we have to address, that we have to think about. I'm working with somebody right now that I have an incredible respect for, that we've worked with for years and years. We're talking decades. And he wanted to name his product after something that is feline. And I said, no, you are not going to do that. Let's get the feline word out of here. Let's not do that. And he didn't even realize that he was relating that to what he thought the guys would think was cool. It just was kind of unconscious for him. He just thought it would be really neat to name something with that term. And I said, no, I will not be involved with it if you do this. So I think it's really important to realize that much of this is unconscious and it's based off of the terms that are already out there. And as we talked about the repercussions of doing it does leave a poor view in the company name. This gentleman that is building out this product he's building out his next product, and it's the only thing that he's going to be represented for. It can cause a loss in revenue, loss in your customer base, as well as detrimental to the organization morale. Do you really want to be working or known for that? It was one of the things that I was really particular about, that I would not be involved with working on his product with him if he was going to name it with something that was feline named. Women often aren't considered too. When we start having gender-based communication styles and start talking about this is something that I heard a very long time ago, that men are judged on their potential, women are evaluated on their past performance. Often when people were talking about who they were considering for a promotion, for a job, any of this, they would come back and say, well, yeah, I can see him in this role. And then when I would mention a woman to that role, they're going, well, I really haven't seen her do anything like that I think she would be good fit for this. And you recognize that this is happening kind of subconsciously behind the scenes. And those women aren't in there, and maybe even allies aren't in the room to make this decision, aware of this. Many folks may have a list of men that they're thinking about all the time because they think about them quickly. And this is something that you can even test out. If there is a job promotion coming up, ask who they're thinking about. Have you thought about anybody for that role? Who is it? And see if there's any women's names that come up on the list that they say. Because we find out that often women just aren't even on the list. They have to be prompted. They have to be said. And this is where DEI initiatives really do come into power. And the same thing goes for people of color. They're not being considered for these roles. They're not being positioned for it because they're just not on the forefront of mind when we start to say, you should really apply for this role. You should really consider for this role. Apply for it, be a candidate, be a position, let me be an ally, let me be a sponsor and sponsor you for this promotion. So what are the benefits of inclusive language? Organizations were 25% more likely to be profitable if they embraced a DEI initiative, 40% less estimated inclusive employer turnover. That is a big one. It's expensive to lose employees. That critical knowledge that they've already had, that they've had years to build, that takes a long time to build. 30% more inclusive talent was available to the organizations. I noticed that when I went to Microsoft. I could not believe the percentage of women and people of color that I was seeing just on my onboarding. I knew that it was a major force to be reckoned with. And you see that in the profit sharing, you see that in the products that are coming out of there. Definitely look at that. And employees are happier overall. I can't get over that when you are considered part of this. I am now with a company with Redgate that I'm seeing this, a very strong DEI initiative, and it makes a difference for me. I feel more included. I feel a more inclusive communication style, how they interact. It's just more pleasant. It's absolutely more pleasant. And if you like going to work, you want to work there longer. So words matter. Make a conscious effort to use more inclusive words to describe both men and women in your world. Begin to replace one word at a time. I know mine right now is guys. I want to stop using the term guys. I'm going to be working on that to make sure. I'm trying to use the word folks more often. If you can think of another one, let me know. I don't think I'm really that good at this of coming up with new terms. So definitely let me know. I'm always looking for examples. And have a list of women. This is something I do try to do all the time. People that I can recommend, no matter if it's for writing books, it's for positions. Prepare when conversations require ally or sponsorship that you can stand up and sponsor somebody. And of course, this definitely goes for people of color too, because we're really, really, really weak at this in the technical world. If you're interested in any of the stuff that was based on this, these are great articles. I've included them in here. And what I would like to do is see if there were any terms that we had, if I can get. There's the chat. It's getting the chat to come up. Oh, I like some of these words. Well-behaved. Christina recommended well-behaved woman. That's what we were talking about. A well-behaved woman rarely makes history. Thank you for that. I could not remember that. And then Cindy came in with it too. Thank you, both of you. All of you. Yes. Sarah said, I find most men that I've worked with in tech have been respectful and helpful, but in every org, there was always a handful of men who made comments they would never make to other men. Totally unnecessary. And that's a lot of times how I would call it out, where if I was feeling uncomfortable, because I wasn't really sure why I felt uncomfortable, I just knew I would turn around the conversation in my head and say, okay, where they had your name or they said she, turn it around and make it a man's name and he. And if it seemed really ridiculous then I understood why I felt uncomfortable with it. So I agree, that happens often. Christina also said there was a study a few years ago that showed that men were actually more emotional in the workplace than women. It's just we don't recognize those emotions. I would agree with this as well. I would always hear, that, well, Kellyn, you got really emotional about this. I was reported to my boss at Microsoft that I had gotten angry in a meeting, and the gentleman had actually gotten angry, my peer. And he's like, Kellyn wasn't the one who was angry. I was angry. Why did he report that Kellyn was angry? I was actually the one that was explaining what was going on and why Matt was upset. And it was the strangest thing that we dealt with this. But Matt, I don't know if they were afraid to call him out that he was angry, that it was easier to report that I was angry. But very interesting that I was viewed as angry, even though I was the one who was trying to be the calm one and explain what was going on. And I agree with Cindy too, that it's much worse for Black women. My first job, the other DBA hired with me was a Black woman who's just astounding and amazing. And she left the DBA world in 9 months. And she just told me, she says, Kellyn, I am a Black woman working for a Southern Oil company, and this is just not going to work for me. And I kept thinking, you have a 4-year degree in database technology. I have no degree in this. If you can't make it, how am I going to? It just blew me away what was going on. Oh, and Alex, you put a couple up here that are horrible, but I agree with it. Don't be a pussy. You are being a Karen. These are both terms that I have heard used over and over again. And I'm sure you've probably heard, I've changed this to you're being a Kevin. Yeah, we got Kevin too. There's another one too, Kurt, Chad. Yeah, these are all terms. Big, you know what energy? Yeah, open the kimono. That one really makes me cringe every time I hear it. I don't like that term at all. Dramatic, crazy, ambitious. Yeah, people have a real problem with women's ambition. So it's a huge challenge. When I was going for my ACE director, the Oracle community, the people that handle the ACE, and ACE is same as MVP on the Oracle side, came back and said, oh, you can't be an ACE director. Your husband's already an ACE director. And it's like, would you like to repeat that? And all of a sudden they realized what they had said and everybody stepped back. But we recognized that, it was like, well, the men can be ACE directors and do whatever they want, but the women can't. A lot of times they would ask me to step back and only Tim could do it. And when I came into the Microsoft community, he kind of stayed back and let me do my thing. And it was very interesting. I went to SQL Saturday Nashville, and for the first time it had ever happened to him, where they thought I was the speaker. He was not a speaker at the event. They were like, well, Kellyn's a speaker. If you'd like some coffee, some good coffee, go in there and get the coffee in the speaker room. And he's like, I've never had that happen before. He says, that's so surreal. So you recognize it. You recognize that women are seen very different in a younger technical community. Women are expected to be likable too. And high maintenance is a term also. Saying that, I like to say, I'm not high maintenance, I'm not low maintenance, I'm self-maintaining. I think that's nice to say. No, I'm self-maintaining. I'm good. Yeah. Likable. Women do not need to be likable. And I have had also women that are incredibly ambitious and capable being expected to be maternal to coworkers and peers and take time out from what they're doing to take care of other people. I think that goes along with likable too. And I am constantly being told I'm mouthy, and I say it myself. I'm probably guilty of this myself. I'm very verbal and I don't mind it. I say what needs to be said. And I think that's really that statement is saying, well, I'm not mouthy. I say what needs to be said. I am very open, clear, conscientious. Those are those terms. Oh, and words that we need to drop, master and slave. Oh, that's a technical term that's used. Absolutely. Y'all, and I use folks. Cindy, you're right. Y'all, folks. Yep. Oh, and this is a good one. Cindy says, check out the Capor Center's tech labor study, natives in tech and leaky tech pipeline. Awesome, awesome recommendation. And I want to stop calling women dude. I do this too. I call everybody dude. Yeah. And anger is an emotion. It really is interesting that I always found that I would have guys get really angry at work, and especially like we're in a high tense situation. Let's say that we have an outage and it's tense. It's frustrating. You're under a lot of pressure. And I understand fully why somebody gets angry and wants to punch a hole in the wall. But that they punched a hole in the wall and nobody thought anything of it, but another person has a few tears and they're like, oh, she got really, really over emotional. It's all frustration. It's all frustration. We react to it differently. What was deemed, acceptable when we were children, of course. It is the end of our time. I really love all the added benefits, the words that you guys added in here as well. I finally found my last slide. If you're interested in connecting with me, again, I just started at Redgate. I've got a brand new email address out there. I'm also easy to get a hold of on my blog at DBA Kevlar, as well as DBA Kevlar at, there it is.
Yeah.
There we go. We have a slide.
Got
See,
slides.
look. Now everybody knows who we are. Very, very basic slide. So
You're good. You're good. Gmail.com. I really appreciate everything that all these contributions that we've had, and hopefully this was helpful. Anything from the WIT group that you need to add?